just flying a lunar module, but having sort of broken those temporary bounds with Earth and having been out to the moon and having been able to look back at our Earth, get a feeling and an interpretation of what I saw and what I felt, I think helped me both just from a standpoint of what to know, what to look for, and also on a level of confidence, because certain things that I can expect, that I can tell Ron and Jack, hey, it's going to be this way, regardless of whether you think how you think about it. It's going to be this way. I know, I've been here, I've seen it, and it's happened to me. This goes a long way. A little awareness, a little experience certainly helps, and I'm very, very glad, being commander of Apollo 17, that I've had the opportunity to have flown on Apollo 10, to have had that experience. And you mentioned John Young. Of course, he flew again on Apollo 16, and he's my backup on Apollo 17. So his experience on Apollo 16 is tremendously important to what I'm doing right now, and I talk and live with him daily and try and sort of extrapolate our training problems and what we're doing and what we're going to do on the moon to some of his experiences. Well, of course, when I was selected for the program, I had very high aspirations of flying a lunar landing, but Apollo at that time, when Germany was going on, although it was in existence and in work, for those of us who were very deeply involved in Germany, it was still quite a step away. And I used to give a talk now and then to different groups throughout the country, and talked about, this is when I first got in the program, before I even flew, and talked about, gee whiz, on Gemini we're going to actually get out of a spacecraft and walk in space, and sort of joked about it a little bit, but seriously tried to explain how it was going to happen. Talked about the fact that someday we're going to walk on the surface of the moon. Not just go there, but walk on the surface of the moon. And I believed it, even though I found it hard to believe myself. I did believe it because I believed in what I was doing. But I turned around one day and I found out, gee, I was one of those guys who was walking in space. And, you know, with a little luck and God willing, I'll be one of those guys who's going to walk on the surface of the moon. And even having done some of this, with the opportunity to look ahead to doing some more of it, it's still almost unrealistic to me. At that moment when we got out of our spacecraft on the Gemini 9, and came aboard the carrier, I guess the only thing I could think of was, my God, we were there, we did our best, we think we accomplished our mission, and we were home, and it was a very exciting mission. At that moment, no, I didn't have any thoughts about flying in Apollo or any place else. I was just thinking about the smiles and the excitement of the sailors aboard the ship, and that was probably, I think, both in Gemini and Apollo, one of the most gratifying and rewarding moments of the whole flight, was to come back and share that excitement and share that accomplishment with the people back home. Now, the landing site of Apollo 17, Taurus Littrow, is, and I'm speaking from the guy who's actually going to fly the spacecraft to land it at this particular site, is very, very challenging. Just topographically speaking, it's sort of a box canyon surrounded by mountains on three sides, and a cliff that was either formed by an earthquake or by lava flows or by some other means across the front of this canyon. We have a landslide that comes off one of the mountains on the left that, at least we think it's a landslide, and it has some rubble that is strewn across our landing site and across some of the craters just in front of where we're going to land. So it's very, very challenging from a pilot point of view, and it's very interesting from a geologic point of view, because we hope that there may be up to 4 different types of materials, geologic finds you might call them, from 4 different periods of the moon's history, from the very beginning to possibly the what we call the present time. The landing site was picked not because it's challenging, not because it's an exciting place to go, obviously, but because it geologically is interesting, and from the scientific point of view, in terms of the instruments that we're going to place on the surface, it gives us a tremendous network of active scientific instrumentation that is still active from all the previous Apollo missions, spread across the face of the moon. We can see activity of earthquakes and meteor impacts, and it gives us a pretty good cross-section to pinpoint where this activity is and exactly what's happening. Some people think that because Apollo 17 is the final Apollo lunar landing, that it should be a spectacular of some kind, so they decided, or someone decided, that it would be a night launch. Well, it is a night launch, but it was not planned that way. It really came out by accident. The fact that you pick a landing site, and our landing site is in a relatively remote area of the moon in the northeast corner, and once you decide the month of the year that you're going to launch that particular spacecraft, in our case in December, the launch time of day is really dictated to us. So the fact that we're going at 9:53 at night Eastern Time is something we don't have any choice over. We can't pick 8 o'clock in the morning or banker's hours. On Apollo 10 we went at 12:48 at noon, just after noon. Even though it wasn't a lunar landing, we had to go at that time in order to get the sun at the right place over the landing site we were to observe prior to Apollo 11 landing. Apollo 17 is the same way. Nevertheless, that night launch is going to be very, very exciting. I think as much so for the people who are watching it as the three of us who have the opportunity to fly it.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 10 minutes, 55 seconds, and counting. This time, some computer checks being run with the launch vehicle. The spacecraft has now gone to full internal power. Up to this point, the spacecraft fuel cells had been sharing the power load with an external source. Also going on at this time are some checks of the Astrocom circuit. This is the circuit which is used by the launch operations manager, spacecraft test conductor, Stoney, and the 3 astronauts at launch time. This to ensure that they are not getting any extraneous voices or having to listen to any of the other networks which might be carrying on conversations which they don't need at that time. Countdown proceeding smoothly, T-minus 10 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting. This is Kennedy Launch Control. This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 8 minutes and counting. T-minus 8 minutes and counting. The Vice President in the firing room at the Launch Control Center, observing the final minutes of the countdown, and he'll watch the launch from here. The countdown has proceeded smoothly, picking up at 11:53 a.m. this morning. Our weather continues to look good as we aim toward a 9:53 p.m. Eastern Standard Time launch. Now T-minus 7 minutes, 37 seconds, and counting. This is Kennedy Launch Control. This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 5 minutes, 54 seconds, and counting. At this time, entering the final phases of the countdown, various elements of the team reporting into Test Supervisor Bill Schick with their go, no-goes for launch. At launch time, a water deluge system at the pad will spray water over the entire area of the pad, some 400,000 gallons of water, more than an average family would use in 3 years, will be spread over the pad and the swing arms, protecting them from the searing flames of the Saturn V first stage. Various elements reporting in now. First stage reporting they are go. Range safety, Superintendent of Range Operations, they are go. Launch Operations Manager reports he is go for launch. Launch Director Walter Caprian has given a go for launch. We passed the 5-minute mark, T-minus 4 minutes, 55 seconds and counting, and swing arm number 9 now coming back to the fully retracted position. The launch escape system sitting atop the spacecraft named America by the crew, now could pull the crew to safety if there were any problems while the vehicle remains on the pad or during the early portions of the flight. At the T-minus 4-minute mark, we'll be standing by for a word from the launch vehicle test conductor, Norm Carlson, giving a clear for launch for the launch vehicle ignition. At T-minus 3 minutes, 7 seconds, we'll go on an automatic sequencer. It's called the Terminal Countdown Sequencer. The astronauts on the Astrocom circuit now reporting and thanking the launch team for all their prayers and all their help. T-minus 3 minutes, 55 seconds, and counting. Apollo 17, the launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed, reports the Launch Operations Manager over the Astrocom circuit. T-minus 3 minutes, 40 seconds, the countdown continuing to go along smoothly. Once we go on the terminal countdown sequencer, the count will be automatic from there on out. The countdown sequencer will initiate the various functions from that time on. However, the men here in the firing room will be monitoring their consoles, watching temperatures, pressures, various readouts. They could override that terminal sequencer if necessary. Moving up now to the time when we'll go on that terminal sequencer, T-minus 3 minutes, 10 seconds, and counting. Spacecraft ready light has come on, indicating that the spacecraft is ready. We are now on the terminal sequencer. Launch sequence has started. Flowing of that water on the pad will begin at the 1 minute mark. Flowing on the flame deflector below the launch vehicle, on the launch pedestal itself, and along the swing arms, which will be coming back at liftoff. Instrument unit ready light has come on. Emergency detection system ready light is on. All indications are we are go for launch as we approach the 2 minute, 30-second mark. Pressurization of the various propellant tanks now aboard the space vehicle is starting. S2 or second stage liquid oxygen tanks now pressurized. These propellant tanks are pressurized with helium to ensure that during the flight the fuel flows properly down through the engines. It's quiet here in the firing room now as the men are monitoring their consoles, looking at the temperatures, checking pressures and a variety of parameters to ensure everything is in a go condition. Pressurization continuing on the fuel tanks at this time. We'll go to the critical power transfer at the T-minus 50-second mark in the countdown. At that time, we'll transfer external power source to the flight batteries aboard the space vehicle. The final action by the crew aboard the spacecraft America will be a final guidance alignment. This conducted by the spacecraft commander, Gene Cernan. The flight of Apollo 17 will be able to be seen, depending on weather conditions, some 500 miles away as it goes into Earth orbit. Pressurization continuing. Liquid hydrogen tanks now aboard the second stage have been pressurized. All propellants aboard the second stage now pressurized. A cover aboard the cue ball. This is the cue ball system on top of the launch escape system will be pulled off just shortly before launch. First stage propellant tanks have been pressurized, now past the 1 minute mark, and we are going on internal power. Now all systems to internal power. We'll be looking for the engine start sequence at the 8.9 second mark in the countdown. The engines will build up to a thrust of 7.6 million pounds. T-minus 30 seconds. We have a cutoff. We have a cutoff at T-minus 30 seconds. We're standing by at T-minus 30-second mark. We'll bring word to you just as soon as we get it. We have a cutoff at T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds and holding. This is Kennedy Launch Control. This Apollo Saturn Launch Control, we're holding at the 30-second mark. This was an automatic cutoff, cut off by the terminal sequencer. As mentioned, this sequencer initiates various actions. Each action must take place and must be completed before the next one can be initiated. If anything does not get completed in time, there will be an automatic cutoff. This cutoff was automatic, done by the sequencer. We're standing by now to check just what the problem was. Now T-minus 30 seconds and holding. This is Kennedy Launch Control. This Apollo Saturn Launch Control, the astronaut crew aboard the spacecraft going through their various safing now, safing of all systems, and the launch team here continuing through their emergency procedures. We'll be standing by to check out the problem just as soon as we can get word. T-minus 30 seconds and holding. This is Kennedy Launch Control. This Apollo Saturn Launch Control, the safing procedures continuing at this time. Up to the T-minus 30-second mark, the countdown had been proceeding smoothly. Weather conditions at launch were predicted to be and appeared to be good at that time. However, we had an automatic cutoff from the terminal countdown sequencer, and we're standing by to see just what caused that automatic cutoff. All systems being safed at this time. T-minus 30 seconds, and we are in a hold. This is Kennedy Launch Control.